Welcome to this flask-query-builder tutorial. Flask-query-builder is a package that I developed myself in order to help me with sorting and filtering the results of a Flask RESTful API that uses SQLAlchemy as its ORM. So there's a lot of boilerplate code involved when wanting to filter or sort the results of a request using SQLAlchemy and Flask. So I developed this application to overcome that problem, and I'm here to present you with this solution. So without any further ado, let's begin. So we're here in our IDE, so we're going to install Flask Query Builder. So we're going to head to our terminal, and I'm using Poetry, so I'm going to say Poetry add Flask Query Builder. Okay? So with this, I can add the dependency. But if you're using pip, you can do this. You can do pip install Flask Query Builder. And this will install it globally. So now that we have installed Flask Query Builder, let's head to our user resource and see how we can use the query builder. So if we head to API resources and then the user resource, here we have our user resource, which grabs our users from the database, creates a schema, and then returns these users. So let's start our development server. So we're going to say Python 3 app.py. Okay, so our development server is running. So we're going to head to Postman, make this request, and we get all of our users back. Okay, so how do we use the query builder? It's quite simple. So you can call query builder, import that from flask-query-builder.query, and add the model that you want to query. So here I'm going to say user. So I'm going to remove this, and here we need to access the query, and then we're going to get all of our users. So if we head back to Postman and we make this request, we get the exact same result. Now that we have set up the query builder, here we can start filtering our resource. So here we have a method called allowed filters. So we're going to call that, and this accepts a list of filters. So filters can be filter classes that inherit the filter class, or they can be strings. So in this case, if I say first name, this gets converted to an allowed filter of an exact match. So we can filter by the first name, and this has to match exactly what is in the database. So if we head to Postman, and here we add the filter, and the way we add the filter is we say filter, we open square brackets, and we add the filter name. So we're going to say first name, close the bracket, and then we're going to assign this to something. So here I'm going to say Emily. So if we make the request, we get one user that their first name is Emily. So we can add an exact filter in a different way with the class filter as well. So here we can say allowed filter. So we can import this from flask-query-builder.query, and here we can call the exact method on this filter. And here we have two parameters. One is required and one is optional. So the first one is the name that you want to use on the filter on the front end. So here I'm going to say surname. So if I was to leave this as is, it would use this on the filter on the front end, and it will also look for something like that in the database. But if we head to user, that's not what it's called. It's called last name. So the way we solve this issue is by passing the second parameter. So here we can say last name. So essentially what this means is use this on the front end when you're querying the endpoint, and try to find this in the database of users. So a user column called last name. So if we head back to our API, here we can change this and we can say surname, and we can add something here, I don't know, Johnson. There you go, we have one user called Bob Johnson. So another way you can add a filter is by a custom filter. So for example, let's say I want to filter by the name of the user, but by name I mean the full name. So whatever we pass on the front end, it could either match the first name or the last name. And this is a very common use case. So we're going to say allowed filter dot custom. So here we put the name that will be passed on the front end. So here I'm just going to say name, and this one accepts a filter class. So we're going to go here into our project and we're going to create a filters package. So here I'm going to say filters. This is where we're going to keep all our flask-query-builder filters. So I'm going to add this. And here, let's just say Python file and just say user. So here we're going to keep all our user related filters. So we're going to create this file, and here we're going to say class name filter. And this has to extend the filter class from flask-query-builder. So here we're going to say filter, and we're going to import that class. So from flask-query-builder.filters, import filter. So here I'm going to implement my abstract methods, and this is filter. And here we have a few parameters that get passed. So we've got the query, which is our query object, the model, which is the model we instantiated the query builder on, the filter name is what we passed here, you might need it or you might not, and the values is the list of values that is passed from the front end. And those are comma separated values. So for this one, for example, I'm going to say if there is no length in the values, so essentially if no values were passed, just return the query as it was passed. Otherwise, we want to do something with it. So here, because I only want to accept one value, I'm going to say value is equal to values, and I'm going to get the first value. And here I'm going to return a new query. So I'm going to say return query dot filter, and here we can filter our query. So here we said we get the query, the model, and the filter name. So we can access something on the model. In this case, the model is user, so we could say get attribute on the model, and we could say first name. And then we could do something with this. And here we have a method called iLike, okay? And here we can say, we can pass an F string, and here we're going to pass 2 percentages as wildcards, and here we're going to pass the value. So basically saying here, on the user model, first name, I want this value that was passed to have a case insensitive comparison. And here we can do an OR, and we're going to copy this, same thing here. And we're going to do the same for the last name, okay? And essentially we're done with our filter. So essentially what we're saying here is try and match the first name with the value that was passed, as well as the last name. So any of them can match. But if you don't want to use this, this notation here, you can say user, you can import the user, you can remove the quotes, and you can do it this way. So you can say user dot last name. It's up to you. So if we head back to our resource, here we can call that class that we just created. So we're going to say name filter. I'm going to import it and we're going to instantiate it. So if we go here, we can say name is equal to John. And here we get two users, one with the first name of John and one with the last name of Johnson. And because we had a wildcard, the last name matched as well. And finally, you can also use a custom filter for a related model. So for example, here I'm going to duplicate this and I'm going to say row. And here I want to add a row filter. So I'm going to head to my filter, user filters, and here I'm going to say class row filter extends filter. And here we're going to implement our methods. So we're going to go here, we're going to implement our abstract methods. And here we're going to say if not length of value. So if no values were passed, just return the query. Otherwise, we want to filter our query. So we're going to say query.filter. And here we're going to say row. We're going to import the row. And here we're going to say slug in. And here we're going to pass all the values that were passed. Okay. And we're going to head back to our resource and we're going to instantiate our row filter. So we're going to say row filter. We're going to import this, going to instantiate it. But something you've got to remember here is when you're filtering by a related model, you have to remember to join that table. Otherwise, this will not work. So here you can say dot, and here you can say join, and you're going to say user.rows. Okay. And this will filter our users with the specific rows. But just to have visibility, I'm going to include those rows in the response. So we're going to say options and we're going to say joined load. And here we're going to say user.rows. And this is just to verify that we're getting the correct users back. So here we're going to say row. And here we have two rows. We have admin and super admin. So here I'm going to say admin. And here we've got this user that has both admin and super admin. This user has admin, admin, and admin. So we're getting 1, 2, 3, 4 users back. However, here we can say super admin instead. So if we make this request, we get this user that has super admin, and super admin. So we're getting 3 users. But if we want to get users that have either super admin or an admin row, we can say super admin, comma, admin. And this will get translated as a list. So if we make this request, we get this user that has an admin and super admin. This user has admin, super admin, admin, and admin. So the query builder supports filtering the request as well. So we're going to go ahead here because there's a method called allowed sorts. And this again accepts a list of sorts. So this can be either a string or a filter class. So in this example, we can say first name, and this will be a sort. So if we head back to Postman, and I'm going to remove all of this here, and I'm just going to say sort is equal to first name. So if we run this, so here we've got Bob, then we've got David, Emily, Jane, and then we have Michael. So we can do the reverse sort by prefixing this with a negative sign. So if I run this again, we get the reverse. So we get Michael, then we get John, Jane, Emily, David, and Bob. So if we head back to our IDE, what if you wanted to change the name of that sort? So I mean, change it in the request side. So in order to do that, then you would have to call the allowed sort class. So we're going to say allowed sort. Going to import that, and you're going to say field, and here you're going to add the name that you want to call this. So here we're going to say name, and here we're going to say that the internal name is first name. So I'm going to remove this, and this is going to achieve the same thing that we had before, but here we're going to say name, and we achieve the same result. So if we head back to here, you can also add what is called a custom sort. So what if we wanted to sort by the language of the user? So in this case, the language of the user is held on the preference model, which is a related model. So here I'm going to come here and I am going to say allowed sort. And here we're going to say custom. We're going to give it a name. So I want to sort by the language. And here we're expecting a sort class. So we're going to head here to our project and we're going to create a package called sorts. And here we're going to keep the user related sorts in a user file. So here what you need to do is you need to create the sort class. So we're going to say class language sort, and we're going to extend the sort class from flask-query-builder. So we're going to say sort, we're going to import that, and here we can implement the abstract methods. So here again we have the query object, the model that was instantiated from the query builder, the sort name, and if the direction of the sort is descending. So here we're going to start with if it's descending, we need to do it in a descending order. So we're going to say return query, and here we're going to order by, and here we're going to say preference, because we want to sort by the preference language. And here we're going to call descending, okay? However, if it's not descending, we're just going to do the opposite. So we're going to say query dot order by, and here we're just going to say preference dot language, and we don't need to add descending here. So if we head back to our resources, we can say language sort. Going to instantiate this, and here if we head back to Postman and we say language, this was sorted by the preference, but here I'm going to go and I am going to come here and eager load the preference so we can see what that looks like. Oh, and also we need to join by the preference. Okay, so if we head back to Postman and we make this request, I'm going to say language. So we're going to run this, and here we've got the first user, which has English as their language. The second one again has English. The third one has English. And here we have the next user, which has German. And here we have the another user which has Japanese, and here we have Vietnamese. So our result is sorted by the language of each of the user in ascending order. So if we want to do descending, we add a negative sign here and we run this, and here we have Vietnamese, Japanese, German, and then we have the rest with English. So this is the way you sort the result of a resource. So you might be wondering what happens if we try to either filter or sort by a field that was not specified within the list of allowed filters or allowed sorts. So in this example, we're not allowing filtering by the ID. So what will happen if we try and do that? So if we head back here and we add a filter, so we're going to say filter, and we're going to say filter by the ID, and I don't know, let's say ID of 4. So if we make this request, we get an exception. So it says invalid filter exception, applied filter ID not allowed. So essentially we get an exception whenever either a filter or a sort is not supported. So let's just try this with a sort as well. So if we sort by, let's say the, what did we have here? We had name, language. Let's sort by the last name. So if we run this, again, we get an invalid sort exception, applied sort last name not allowed. So this is the behavior of flask-query-builder when you do not specify one of the sorts. And this is for security reason, so that the backend can control what sorts and filters are allowed to be added. I hope you have enjoyed this video, and if you have, please like, comment and share the video, as this helps the channel grow so I can keep making these videos. I upload new videos every week about Python and related frameworks, so if you want to get notified when I do, please subscribe as well as click the notification bell so you can be notified whenever a new video is released. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.